Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Honest Conversations with Esther. My name is Esther, and I'm the host on this channel. If you're joining me for the first time, please don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. So, the kind of content that I share is on personal development, it's on financial literacy, as well as career development, and also a little bit of lifestyle and relationships. But mostly it's about personal development. And every month I bring to you one book that I read. And the book for this month was Life Strategies by Dr. Phill. So some of you may be familiar with Dr. Phill because he's a popular psychologist. He talks about relationships, and he also had his own slot rather on Oprah. So this book, Life Strategies by Dr. Phill, it says doing what works, doing what matters. And I think that's a pretty accurate summary of the book, in my opinion. And as I always like to say, the faintest ink is better than the brightest memory. So, of course, I brought my trusty notebook with me, and I'm going to talk about some of the takeaways from this book without being a spoiler for those that haven't read it, but also just to drum up interest and just to summarize basically what this book talks about. So, Life Strategies by Dr. Phill. Number one, the writing style. I like that it's really easy to read. It uses everyday language. There's no jargon, there's no psychobubble about just complicated words, using unnecessarily complicated words that complicate things unnecessarily. So I like that the language is easy. Number two, I like that he breaks up the monotony of, if, for example, it gets to a point where it's talking about too many intellectual concepts or anything, and then he makes it practical by bringing in a life story, a real life story of someone who's gone through that particular struggle he's talking about to get over, or who's applied something, or what it looks like when you're not applying a particular method that he's talking about in his book, or a strategy that he's talking about, a life strategy. And number three, I like that it has practical exercises. So in every chapter, it has practical exercises on what you can do if you're not applying a particular life strategy. And then I like that it's one of those personal development books that doesn't just talk about, you can do it, you can if you think you can, but it actually tells you the how, and it lets you get down to being real with yourself about where you are. And also, I like that it gets you out of the victim mindset to say that things happen to all of us, but this particular book says, it's taking back the power, taking charge, and being honest with yourself about how you contribute to perpetuating these negative cycles. And one of the things that I liked about this book in particular, there was a part where it said that people don't follow advice, they follow payoffs. And you can actually use this as a hack in your own life and understand what are the payoffs for my behavior. Why do I engage in certain negative patterns? Why do I behave and think in a particular way? What's the payoff of this? Even though I don't like the negative end result, there must be something that I'm getting out of this. That's why I continue to engage in the behavior. Like, for example, touching a hot stove. You know that immediately you touch a hot stove, you're going to get burned, right? That's why you don't repeat the behavior. But then with other negative patterns, you don't immediately get burnt. But with other negative patterns, you may realize that the result is bad, but you still engage in it. So what's the payoff? You know what I mean? What's the reason behind this that I continue to engage in negative behavior? Number two, I like the marketing of the book. So at the end of the book, it gives you a chapter of the book that he wrote immediately after it. So it's like, okay, I've gotten this far, I've gotten to the end of the book. I've enjoyed Dr. Phil's writing so much, such that I'm going to go ahead and read the next book that he wrote after. So it gives a snippet of the book that's the 7 step strategy to reconnecting with your partner. So honestly, after reading that part, I was really interested in reading the book that Dr. Phill wrote after. I haven't gotten my hands on it yet, but when I do get my hands on it, I'm definitely going to do a review. Number three, I like the content. So it's not one of those books that gives you like feel good rhetoric about talking about, oh, you can do it, you can if you think you can. It's actual practical strategies to getting things done. So without being a spoiler for what this book talks about, I'm just going to read some of the headlines of the chapters to talk about the main themes. So Chapter 1 is get real, getting real with yourself. How am I contributing to the current state of affairs in my life? The truth is, everybody you see, each and every person is going through something. But the difference is, of course, the intensity. Some people are going through more than others. But the truth of the matter is, we don't choose the cards that we are dealt in life, but we get to choose how we respond. Number 2, you either get it or you don't. Chapter 3, you create your own experiences. Chapter 4, people do what works. So this chapter talks a bit about relationships with people as well. If people know that you don't require respect for them to stay in your life, guess what they'll do? They'll continue to disrespect you. But if you set the minimum standard to say respect is a bare minimum for you to actually stay around me, you have to treat me a particular way, you can't hit me or be abusive and expect me to stay in the environment, they won't continue to do it. And of course, certain people are stuck in their ways, and what you can do is just basically walk away from that experience. Number 4 is people do what works. That's what we've just talked about. Number 5 is you can't change what you don't acknowledge. You have to be real with yourself and define the problem correctly. So it says the biggest part of finding a solution to a problem actually is defining the problem correctly. Because imagine you go to the hospital and the doctor is just giving you medication for the wrong problem. Get what I mean? Because there was a misdiagnosis. So then you won't actually get cured for what you're going through. Number 7, there is no reality, only perception. So we suffer more, especially with our fears, we suffer more from our perception and our imagination than we do from the reality of the things that we actually fear. Number 8, life is managed, not cured. So what this simply means is that there will always be problems. Even the Bible says in this life you will always have trouble. So life is managed, not cured. So you have to find the factors in your life that you can actually control, because there are fixed matters in your life, and then there are variable matters in your life as well. So those things which are variable, which sort of have a way in which you can manipulate the situation to sort of ease your ailments or a particular problem, you can manage those. But for those which you cannot manage, there's also the case of acceptance. Number 9 would teach people how to treat us. That speaks for itself. Number 10, there's power in forgiveness. So forgiveness is more for you than it is for the person that hurt you. Holding on to the grudge will not take away the pain. And I know one of the toughest parts about forgiveness is actually feeling like if you let the person off the hook, you're accepting that the wrong they've done was not wrong. So forgiveness is not erasing the wrong and saying that it was actually a good thing that the person who hurt you hurt you. It's just saying, I'll not use this as the lens for which I'll measure other people in other relationships. 2, I'll not allow this to cause me to be an angry, depressed person. 3, I'll also go through the therapy to face this thing, to acknowledge my triggers, and to not let people, to not hurt people based on my own hurt. Do you know what I mean? To not let other people pay for the mistakes of the way that I've been hurt in the past. Number 12, a guided tour of your life. So this chapter basically is like an in-depth chapter where you really get to do a lot of work, go through the exercises. What do I want out of this life? Where I am now? How am I going to get there? And then there's a 7-step strategy, and of course finding your own formula. So I fancy life an exam where we all have our different examination papers. We have different questions, we have different time frames for which in which we're supposed to answer these questions. So what basically life is not looking at your friend and saying, I should apply what the so and so is doing, keeping up with the Johnsies. But instead, life is about finding out what particular question you're dealing with in your unique situation and finding unique ways to solve it. So thank you. That's all I had for you in this week's episode of Honest Conversations with Esther, as we're talking about the book Life Strategies by Dr. Phill. Also, in the next episode, I want to start a series talking about people who don't have access. So access is the name of the next series. So access is when you're talking about people who are marginalized in society. We're going to be talking about the people who need more of a voice, in my opinion. So Access is going to cover people who need a voice, people who have unique stories that are inspiring to the people around us and inspiring to me as well. And Access is going to be talking about the minorities and how we can better have access to financing, whether it's access to education and healthcare. And we're also going to be talking about access in terms of accessibility to certain services for people who are living with disabilities and people from um, households or low income households, especially the children and the young people, and how they can be better given an opportunity to progress and also find their measure of happiness in this life. So thank you. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'm also on Instagram. My Instagram username is Esther underscore Miss Hills. So that's Esther spelled as ASTAR underscore Miss Hills. MISSHILLS. See you on the next episode, and thank you for watching.